Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is Monday, the 15th of January 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the day 101 of the conflict, the war between Israel and Palestine. The number of casualties has exceeded 24,100 and more than 50,000 have been injured, and this is just from Gaza. The figures from the West Bank are different, but they add to the total figure of the casualties. They said some efforts going on as far as the diplomatic front are concerned. Some of the countries are putting pressure like China, but Israel says that it will continue with it with the way it's going on without any pressure. We all also know about the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, and how the South African plea against Israel was also listened to at the International Court of Justice for around 2 days. The first day was the South African side, and the second day was the Israeli side. But Israel said whatever be the consequences of the ruling of the ICJ, it will nevertheless continue with its barbaric tactics. Will it be given a free hand to do that in the days to come, looking at the fact that the US also wants Israel to scale back the barbaric attitude or the violence that it is perpetrating in Palestine? This is going to be part of our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India's overburdened judicial system. Over 50 million criminal civil court cases are pending across India. 77% of prisoners await trial, compared with only 1 in 3 worldwide. People have been waiting for justice for decades. The clearing of backlog, as per a certain estimate of a report, if it began today, would take around 300 years. A lot of question marks as far as the judicial system is concerned. On the one hand, people wait for decades. On the other hand, we have decisions like that on Article 370 and 35A that were given recently by the Supreme Court of India. Raises a lot of questions on the judicial system, and that is what we are going to discuss in our second segment. Our third story concerns the row between the Maldives and India that is deepening with every passing day, and now the Maldives has asked India to also bring back its troops that are currently stationed in the Maldives as we speak. There is a lot of economic to and fro between both the countries, and that also Maldives is trying to scale back and trying to move in other directions, especially in the wake of the increasing and robust relationship that it is beginning to have with China. What impact is it going to have in the region? We'll discuss that in our third segment. Then we are going to discuss the World Economic Forum that is beginning today. Our caretaker Prime Minister Anwar Kakar Saab has reached Davos to attend this meeting that is happening, of course, in the Switzerland. He will be attending 3 key thematic events and will deliver a keynote address on trade, tax, $1 trillion promises. Will also be holding meetings with business leaders as well as the government representatives from different countries on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. Mehmood Hassan Khan, a foreign affairs expert, joins us online to discuss the first story of the day, and that concerns the day 101 of the conflict, the war between Israel and Palestine. Thank you very much, Mehmood Hassan Khan Saab, to have joined us. You're returning to our show after quite a long time, so welcome back. And a happy new year to you and your family as well.
Thank you.
Let's begin with the ruling of the International Court of Justice. Can Israel ignore if the ruling comes in favor of the South African plea and in favor of Palestine, as under the Article 94 of the UN Charter, the Security Council can issue a resolution to direct a state to comply with the ICJ order. But there is also the veto power that countries like the US have, and they have used it to favor Israel in the past. What will happen this time in your point of view?
It's a very good question, keeping in view the rapidly changing geopolitical and geostrategic dimension of the Middle East. As you know that it has the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, and especially Hamas have already been circulated to the greater Middle East. That's why this question is very significant. Chances are that South African case against Israel ongoing inhuman action against Palestine will have the better half. But I personally think that the world politics, or especially the power politics, is not conducive for that kind of morality victory. It would be a more moral victory for Palestine in order to convince the international audience, especially the silent voices around the globe, that the Israel is not doing a great thing for humans suffering from lot of shells and other things. And as you said, that more than 24,100
people have been killed by the Israelis. Now, if the ICJ, let's think that the ICJ ruling comes in favor of South Africa, in favor of Palestine, will it give moral and legal weight? Will it influence the state's actions, for example, in imposing sanctions or boycotting Israel for failing to comply? And I'm sure it is not going to comply with the ruling.
Frankly speaking, ICJ has the power to give its verdict, but it does not have any provision of enforcement or enforcing provisions. So the ultimately matter referred to, as you said, United Nations Security Council, and as you said, there will be again different voices, and the decisive factor would be the veto power. So in this case, I personally think that the role of China would be very much appreciated, because right from the beginning of this crisis, Middle East crisis, Chinese president and especially the foreign minister of China have been striving hard to convince all the stakeholders to give chance for escalation and peace through dialogue, diplomacy and development. But unfortunately, it has not been achieved or materialized. But good thing is that even today the foreign minister of China, Wang, has floated the idea of holding the regional conference on Palestine, especially focusing on the
International Summit for Peace.
Yeah, International Summit for Peace, for focusing mainly on the two-state nation solution. So I personally think that despite the ongoing power politics and the emerging of different power stakeholder in this crisis, the role of China would be like a balancing act, regional balancing act in the days to come.
What are your expectations if and when this summit is held? We've had different United Nations meetings also held in the past on this very issue of Palestine, but nothing seemed to have some kind of a tangible result apart from the one resolution that was passed against the Houthis. But that was the only time that something was passed and some tangible action was taken. Nothing happened with the others. Will this time be any different if a summit is happening?
I personally think that summit will be held in the days to come, because the economic and economics of the Middle East countries is very much on stake, especially the economics of Egypt, Jordan, and even Saudi Arabia. UAE have been feeling the heat of ongoing crisis of Israel, between Israel and Hamas. So that's why all the regional countries have the consensus to put an end to the ongoing conflict, which have very severe socio-economic, geopolitical, geostrategic repercussions, and spillover repercussions may be translated even to MENA, to GCC, even to Southeast Asia. So that's why China is all out to put an end to the ongoing crisis between war between Israel and Hamas as soon as possible.
But you know, this said, Netanyahu says that no one will stop us, quote unquote, despite the fact that his government is facing international pressure, not only from other countries, but also from the US, that has asked it to scale back its barbaric or violent attitude towards the Palestinians. I'll quote what he said. He said, no one will stop us, not the Hague, not the axis of evil, and no one else. How, in your point of view, can a ruler impose genocide and then have the gall to make a statement such as the one he has just made?
The statement of Netanyahu only vividly reflects its arrogance, his denial of the international politics or international order away from the law or the morality. So that's why, because Israel personally think that it has been, or actually it has been supporting by the main stakeholder, I mean to say USA, UK, even the most of the country of European Union. So the backing and support of the European Union, USA, direct military aid, and others diplomatic leverage given by the US, and the close bonding between the US and Israel are the main factors that which compel the Netanyahu to totally discard the international community will to save the dying or suffering of people in Gaza.
But Mehmood Hassan Sahab, what is the tipping point? What is the point of no return for as far as this crisis is concerned? There is a report by the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, which is known as UNRWA, that says that the Gaza Strip's people are suffering acute shortages of food, water, medicine and fuel, and the health system is collapsing. What are the options, in your point of view, available to come out of these multiple crises that the people in Palestine are facing, and also looking at the way Israel or the Israeli Prime Minister and his war cabinet want to move all ahead, despite these different crises that the people are facing?
I personally suggest that there should be immediate ceasefires, especially on the basis of humanitarian. To allow the inflow of humanitarian assistance from the regional countries, especially Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and many other countries who are striving hard to send the basic necessities of medicine, shelter and other things.
Welcome back, and we're in conversation with Mehmood Hassan Khan regarding the 101st day of the conflict, the war between Israel and Palestine. Final question, Mehmood Saab, Bernie Sanders, who we all know is a US Senator, presidential hopeful, is bringing a resolution to the Senate House tomorrow, Tuesday, which directs the State Department to look into potential human rights violations by Israel in Gaza. If it is passed, it will allow Congress to vote on terminating further military assistance to Israel based on the State Department's finding. Will it happen? Will it be passed by the Congress?
It won't be very easy to pass from the Congress, but one thing is sure that it would further polarize the national politics of US and even the make the Congress, US Congress more divided. And that would be a value addition for the Palestinian cause. You know that many advisor of the Joe Biden have already been resigned on the issue of military aid, even without the legitimacy of the Congress or authorization of the different regulatory authorities. So it would be a chance, remote chance, that it will pass by the majority of the, but it will showcase the other voices in US Congress who have been supporting the human cause, who have been fighting for the genocides committed by Israel and other forces of evil.
Let's hope that the sane voices, empower those voices who are trying to perpetrate violence and barbarism in Palestine, and because the number of casualties, the number of wounded, and the number of those people who are in a helpless state because of the lack of food, medicine and water needs to come to an end. There is a tipping point for everything, and that tipping point is almost there. Let's hope before things move to extend this whole conflict and engulf the whole region, that some kind of sanity prevails and some kind of positive developments take place that stop this genocide.
Let's hope for the better.
Let's hope for the best. Thank you very much, Mehmood Hassan Khan Sahab, to have joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our first story regarding the day 101 of the conflict between Palestine and Israel. And the way things are moving along, there is a ray of hope, but the fact remains that the ray of hope is little and far in between. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns India. Now, you must be asking which side of India are we going to talk about, and this time we are going to talk about the overburdened justice system as far as India is concerned. There was a huge article that came in one of the major publications from the United States that targeted this overburdened judicial system as far as India is concerned. The fact also remains that despite what is happening, despite India's claims of being the world's largest democracy, and of course the fact that it says that it is a pluralistic country, there are 50 million, more than 50 million criminal and civil court cases pending across the country, and about 77% of prisoners are still awaiting trial, compared with 1 in 3 worldwide. People wait decades to get justice, and clearing the backlog as far as this report is concerned could take around 300 years. We've been joined by Barrister Safi, Ghauri. We thought to have a jurist here who could discuss that angle with us in a much better manner. Legal expert joins us in the studio. Thank you very much, Barrister Safi, to have joined us. In a vast nation with no shortage of intractable problems, this is one of the huge problems that the country and mostly its people are facing. Why is the system, the judicial system of a country that claims itself to be the world's largest democracy, so flawed?
Right. Thank you, Omar, for having me. It's a real pleasure being here. It's flawed primarily because of a lack of funding, Omar. The Indian judicial system is underfunded by a margin. There are only 19 judges per million people in India, and all political parties have been wanting to increase that number to 50 judges per million people. This is well below the international standard as well. And why do we have a shortage of judges in India? It's because they're spending all their money on the military instead. What we see is their military budget expanding colossally every year at the expense of their judicial system, at the expense of their welfare systems. It's not just the judicial system, it's ordinary things. We have often spoken about how there's a lack of sanitation in India. India is notorious for a lack of toilets, for a lack of normal sanitary systems. Judiciary is just one of those public services that a society needs to function in a well-oiled manner. Unfortunately, that is not a priority for the government and has never been a priority for any of the Indian governments, and that's just downright tragic. Now we can, to a degree, say that India was dealt an unfair hand in the sense that there was a long colonial rule, and India inherited some laws that were not indigenous to the society, laws such as the Rowling Act imposed by the Brits and the fact that they made the judicial system, the fact that this judicial system was made to be harsh, to be inefficient, and to impose a dictatorship of the British Raj on India. But then again, like you said, India is a democracy. It has had more than 70 years now to fix that. There is no reason why they should continue with the same old Indian penal code that the British gave them, with the same CRPC, with the same CPC, the Civil Procedure Code. Unfortunately, we see that India continues to suffer on that end. There's also one more thing that I want to point out here, and that's very important. The Indian Bar Council states that 30% of all Indian lawyers or the people who claim to have legal licenses are fake. They don't actually have them. And then another 50% on top of the 30%, and another 50% of them have never really educated themselves beyond their LLB. They did their LLB, after that they didn't really practice properly, they just sort of got into the system of corruption, of bribery, and they have been doing that ever since. As per the Indian Bar Council itself, only 10 to 20% of Indian lawyers are well qualified to assist the courts in their day-to-day matters. So we see that there is a shortage of judges, there is a shortage of lawyers,
and a shortage of competent
lawyers, competent judges, and why also the question of why are there's very little amount of judges in India is also very interesting, and the reason is simply, as the judges have many times stated themselves, because the salaries are too low. India is spending all of its money on sending people to the satellites to the moon, or for that matter funding its military, maybe trying to oppress people in Kashmir or Nagaland or Manipur or whatever. But the one thing they don't want to be spending money on is increasing the salary of their doctors, their judges, people who really matter in a society, and these are the kind of people who would make things better for them. So it's just misplaced priorities, honestly. There is nothing else. The Indian Chief Justice, I am forgetting his name right now, has also stated on the matter that there is nothing that can be done until and unless the government decides to do something. But the government is a beneficiary.
But you know, the fact remains that on the one hand, we have a backlog that the report says could take 300 years to cover and be up to date. Then we've got 77% of prisoners are in India who are awaiting trial as well. So there's a huge flaw as far as the criminal or the civil cases are concerned. One of the reasons for the backlog, you've made me understand that around 21 judges per million people are present as far as India is concerned. But on the same side, we also see certain cases like that of Article 370 and 35A that are very rapidly taken over by the Supreme Court, and within a matter of, say, maybe 2 years, well, it began in 2019 and 2023, they kind of gave a judgment on it. And they coupled many of the cases on the Article 370 and 35A. When they can couple cases and they can move a bit swiftly as far as issues such as 35A or 370 are concerned, and that too is hugely contested. What about the other cases that are not as contestable?
No, it's such a great question, honestly. And let's look at this. So when we talk about the 50 million pending cases in the Indian courts, 50 million pending cases is a number unlike any I've heard anywhere in the world. Probably the largest pendency in the world. When we talk about such a high level of pendency, 50% of those cases are against the Indian government. So the government has every interest in making sure that the courts are not efficient. It wants the courts not to be efficient, because otherwise there is a huge possibility that the judgment will start coming out against the government. And this happens in a lot of countries. Like most of the cases in any particular country are against the government, but in India the number is much higher. It's 50%. Okay. Now, on the one hand, so because they have this interest in ensuring that incompetent, inefficient judges stay in place who do not rule against them, they then cherry pick people of their own liking and put those judges there. And then when they want to fulfill a political agenda like 35A, like 370, then they use those judges. And now we're seeing this. The very judges that were placed earlier in the day have now become judges of the Supreme Court. So we see that the Indian Supreme Court is no more than a tool of the political government. It's not an independent Supreme Court by any stretch of imagination. And that's what's so tragic about the Indian dream of democracy. I feel like it's such a tragedy, and I feel for it because it's a huge number of people and they deserve to be well governed. But unfortunately, we see that they don't have democracy, they don't have access to justice, don't have access to basic human rights. All they have is just military bravado, constantly trying to oppress neighbors. And you've seen this, India seems to be daggers drawn right now with Pakistan, with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Afghanistan, now with the Maldives, most importantly. And the Maldives has asked all Indians to withdraw all of their troops from the Maldives. It's what India, the isolationist behavior of India that is forcing India to regress is getting worse, and with the lack of justice, it will only continue to get worse.
Let's talk of dispensation of justice in India. I know that you've given your point of view as far as that is concerned, but recently there are about 21,000 teachers in Uttar Pradesh who have been denied their basic salary because they are Muslims and they are teaching mathematics or science in madrasas. This is of course another attempt by the Indian government government pre-elections to kind of appease the Hindu majority or the Hindu hardliners as far as that is concerned. Can they get any form of justice? Can people like these get any form of justice? Those who have been mercilessly been at the target of the Hindu hardliners since the last 2, 3 or more years, can they get any justice? Will they also be waiting 3, 4 decades since till some government comes that finally thinks of justice?
I don't think they can get any justice. This is one of the saddest things. Being in India, everybody wants justice. Kashmiris want justice. The people from Kerala and Tripura and Manipur, and now these people. Recently, the Allahabad High Court, for instance, ruled that there is the Eidgah of that town needs to be dug up because there is supposedly another Hindu temple. This is going to be the third mosque that's demolished to make way for another Hindu temple.
You've got the inauguration of the Ram Mandir on the 26th.
So what is all of this? The fact that we have a government that is making these claims of imposing Hindutva, Hindu Rashtra all over the place, and then we have the courts echoing that very sentiment without any reference whatsoever to the law, not even to the Indian constitution, and which makes me once again wonder what the Indian founding fathers must think. People who made the constitution, people like Nehru, who were actually very adamant about constitutionalism and about basic rights and rights of minorities, especially the kind of rights of minorities that they pledged to the minorities who stayed and did not move to Pakistan. All of those promises just flushed down very clearly. It's no longer even about the law. It's just about whatever the word is and whatever RSS wants to say.
On the one hand, you've got people who wait decades, who still haven't got justice. Then we've got examples in which justice is dispensated, but in favor of the Indian government and the Hindu hardliners. Then we've got also cases such as the 1997 village massacre in Bihar, in which in 2010 a court found 26 people guilty. The men challenged the verdict in the higher court, and 2 years later, citing a lack of evidence, all the 26 people are acquitted. There is a deliberate trend towards helping those in power, helping those who can use whatever means possible to pressurize the courts or to pressurize the judges. And on the other hand, there are people who wait for decades, and then there are decisions that are taken by the biggest court in India against the basic human rights.
I want to tell you something that I read recently. I was reading a book. It's called Legal Eagles. The book is by Indu Ban. Legal Eagles is a book that describes the lives of the 7 most prominent lawyers of India. Indu Ban is India's most famous court journalist. I was reading this book for my own knowledge, and India's most famous lawyer is Harish Salve. Harish Salve is the man who was representing Kulbhushan from India's side in the International Court of Justice.
Right.
So you can imagine he's a very big lawyer. Harish Salve says, he's a Hindu. He says that the most difficult case that he has ever done in his life, and he has done millions of cases of the most difficult sort. He says the most difficult case he's done in his life is the case of Bilkis Bano. Bilkis Bano was an ordinary Muslim woman who was raped and left for dead by Hindu hardliners. He tried going after them, and he says that the pressure that he encountered in trying to prosecute them was the worst pressure that he has ever been through. And he also talks about another very famous case, Yusuf Khan, more commonly known in India as Dilip Kumar. And he says that Dilip Kumar, Yusuf Khan, who changed his name to Dilip Kumar, was once again being persecuted for his religion by the tax office, and that was yet another very difficult case. And it's interesting that India's most prominent lawyer says that the most difficult cases are when the plaintiffs are Muslims, and when he has to defend a Muslim person, that is when he encounters the most resistance from the Indian courts, from the Indian public, and generally as a lawyer gets the most threats. So this should explain everything that we need to know when India's biggest lawyer says this. I don't even need to say this myself, it's him saying it.
Is justice delayed, justice denied in your point of view? And if so, do you feel that any change might happen in the judicial system in India under the current rule?
Under the current rule, I obviously don't have any expectations, Omar. The Indian courts, the Indian government has made itself very clear. I was just listening to your show, just like Netanyahu says that they don't have any regard for the ICJ. Just like that, the Modi also is very, very clear that he does not have any regard for an international rule-based order, does not care about any treaties. We have the Indus Water Treaty with them. Are they trying to, what they're trying to do is they're trying to look into every treaty that they've ever signed with us, not just us, with everybody else, even multilateral treaties like SARC. They've just managed to destroy because of their own hubris. So I don't think that the present government, especially because now the election year is also coming up, so I can't expect them to tone down this rhetoric anytime soon. But perhaps after elections, we'll see slightly better days. And I think maybe after elections, this whole Hindutva thing might get toned down a little bit. Maybe they'll feel like they can now focus on something else. I can only hope. This is me being very optimistic, maybe foolishly optimistic, but that's what I'm hoping for.
All right. Now, when you look at the this is my last question to you. When you look at India's longest-running legal disputes, which is a bank liquidation case, which was settled after 72 years, and that too they gave life imprisonment to a person after 42, after 42 years. Then there are, we've discussed different aspects of the judicial system. What, in your point of view, are the modalities that need to be adhered to in order for a judicial system such as that in India to at least start moving in the right direction?
So it's pretty much the same as what I would ask for, and I have been asking for in Pakistan as well, which is increase the number of judges, improve legal education, lead to the digitization of the courts. We are in a modern era. The Indian courts are also extremely archaic. We need to upgrade our laws. There needs to be a concentrated, focused effort on law. So the government, it's really as simple as that. The government needs to sit and decide its priorities. Is defense its priority, security its priority, is targeting Muslims its priority, or is having rule of law its priority? I really feel like the Indian government is very clear on its priorities at the moment, and for it, rule of law is not a priority. It likes the idea of mob justice. It thrives on it, because every time there are vigilantes who go out, who burn entire villages of Muslims, they get more votes. And so maybe justice does not suit them. Think about it that way. So
anything to get more votes.
Anything to get more votes.
Now that it's election year, they will do whatever they want, whatever they can in order to get a hold of that vote back or even more votes in the coming elections. Thank you very much, Barrister Ghauri, to have joined us, to have talked to us about this, and to have come to the studios. Thank you very much for that. Let's come to our third story, and that concerns the row between the Maldives and India. Now, what has the Maldives done? It has asked India for its troops, the Indian troops that are currently present in the Maldives, to return to their country by the 15th of March. There is this, then there is the economic relationship that has been quite strong between India and the Maldives, that they are also trying to now scale back as far as the Maldives is concerned. We've been joined by Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali Janjua Saab, Senior Analyst, to discuss this row. Now, Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. What brings both these countries to this row? What is the basic reasoning behind this? Didn't the two countries have quite a solid relationship in the past?
Yes, indeed. India and Maldives have enjoyed a very solid relationship. And there was a time once Indian troops came to rescue one of their presidents from a coup attempt. And traditionally, there's economic interdependence of Maldives on India. Nearly 60% of imports come from India. And it's also dependent to a great degree on Indian tourism, because 30% of Maldives' GDP is tourism dependent, and India contributes the lion's share. But over a period of time, it started from 2011 onwards, once there were a series of attempts to break free of this dependence, because over a period of time, India had started treating Maldives as one of its backyards, and these territorial waters as its own, place where they can exert all kind of influence without taking the sensitivities of Maldives into consideration. And now that browbeating and continual tactics of acting as too condescendingly and too patronizingly has elicited a kind of nationalist impulse, and which manifested itself in the shape of Moizo's party, which contested elections on India Out platform and succeeded. And then another factor was the increasing interest China has into this region, because Maldives sits on a very important maritime trade highway, through which 80% of the oil imports of China pass. So Maldives is very, very important to China, and in that big, great game, where India is acting as the regional surrogate of United States and China is asserting its own presence into the area through initiatives like RCEP and other trade and economic engagements. So Maldives has got encouraged through these Chinese, support overtures. And as of now, 20% of public debt of Maldives is owed to China, and China has reassured President Mozo during his recent visit of a deeper and strategic cooperation and a comprehensive strategic cooperative relationship. And they have signed 20 MOUs spanning a wide gamut from trade cooperation into fisheries, improvement of blue economy, and provision of all those goods which India used to provide primarily. And this was the reason that the two countries have come a little apart and India was told very categorically to take out its troops. There are 77 those troops. In fact, they are just operating 2 helicopters and a Dornier aircraft, which is not much, but it's more like a symbolic statement on part of the Moizu government. And Indians have not apparently liked that, neither they have accepted, but their response, a categorical response, in concrete terms, has yet to come. But in terms of international law terms, they've got to abide by a sovereign country's decision and take out their troops. But it would be a big setback for India, which has big power pretensions and has traditionally been seeing this region as its strategic backyard.
All right, Rashid, Wali, Janjua Sahab, now the Maldives is looking towards Turkey, it's looking towards Europe and the US for importing food, for importing healthcare products, and it was relying a lot on India in the past as far as pharmaceuticals, healthcare products and food is concerned. Now that this change in its foreign policy is happening, and we also saw the row that happened when 2 or 3 of the politicians from the government in Maldives criticized Narendra Modi, and as a result there was a huge backlash from the Indian side as well. Looking at it in a complete box-like perspective, do you feel this is a diplomatic failure as far as Indian foreign policy is concerned?
Yeah, it's a big setback for Indians, and they are quite riled up. You see, the statement of President Moizo that we may be small, but that doesn't mean you can browbeat us. This is indicative of that nationalist impulse that is driving the Maldivian nationalism. The 3 ministers who passed a disparaging remark about Narendra Modi, and that remark, in fact, was in clear terms that he's a clown. That remark was also a consequence of that deep nationalist impulse that views any Indian assertiveness, over-assertiveness, and interference into Maldivian politics as a threat. Because the Narendra Modi, Indian president, prime minister, he visited Lakshadweep, one of the islands of India, and a much song and dance was made on media about that potential, the tourist potential, and it was being built up as a rival to Maldives. So Maldivian nationalist impulse also got offended. And these 3 ministers, young ministers, all 3 of those, so they clearly passed those disparaging remarks, and which elicited a lot of aggressive response in India, and their media was up in arms. They started castigating Moiso government, and they also hoped that the internal divisions in the Maldives politics would come to their rescue. And in fact, they were looking at the slot which was won by the opposition member, the mayor slot in Mali. So they thought that perhaps there are divisions in Maldives, and their political homogeneity can be affected through the same Machiavellian tactics that India had employed hitherto. But so far, the people have stood by President Moiso, and especially after his visit to China, his hand has been strengthened. And there's a new confidence in the Maldivian government's on Maldivian government's part, especially after those 20 MOUs. And I think this is a very serious setback for India's foreign policy.
A serious setback indeed, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua Saab. And let's see how the foreign policy of the Maldives and of India is now adapted as far as this new change in relationship between the two countries is concerned. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us to discuss this row between the Maldives and India. Let's discuss our last two stories. The first is on our caretaker, Prime Minister Anwar al-Kakar Saab, who has reached Davos in Switzerland to attend the 54th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum that has now begun in Davos. He's going to have a lot of important meetings on the sidelines. He's also going to address the different fora as part of this important World Economic Forum's mood. He will be in Switzerland from the 15th to the 19th of January and deliver a keynote address on the theme Trade Tech's $1 trillion promise. He will also attend 3 key thematic events: preventing an era of global conflicts, restoring faith in the global system, and preventing economic fractures. That these are very important topics, and of course Pakistan wants to strengthen itself in the Committee of Nations and also base itself as an export-based economy. There are so many facets to our economy that have only gotten better over the last few months, specifically under the caretaker government and the previous government as well. And now what our caretaker Prime Minister hopes to do is to get in more and more people to invest in Pakistan, to invest in its different sectors, whether it be tourism, whether it be business, whether it be all the other sectors that Pakistan can proudly call part of its economy. So let's hope for the very best, and let's see how this World Economic Forum, the 54th annual meeting of this WEF goes along, and of course how we are able to attract the attention of the businessmen, of the world leaders, and of all the different people who are there as far as the importance of Pakistan as an economic hub is concerned. Finally, let's talk about Iceland, where a volcano has erupted, ladies and gentlemen, sending lava flowing into a small town. Hundreds of earthquakes shook the Reykjanes Peninsula, cracking upon a fissure that sent lava spewing into a residential neighborhood for the first time in more than 4 decades. You never, think that, in a place like Iceland, where it's only ice and it's on, it's in one corner of the world, and you will have a volcano, which is quite the opposite. Anyways, the eruption happened around 8 a.m. local time near Hagafell, which is a mountain peak north of the town of Grindavik, according to local media and, of course, the nation's civil defense agency. It caused a fissure in the earth that was more than 3,200 feet long, with glowing lava bubbling through. There you can see the images in the parallel window. The crack has continued to lengthen in the hours since. This is what has been said by the authorities. Within an hour of the crack appearing, webcam footage showed smoke blowing from at least one of the bungalows in the northernmost neighborhoods. As far as the evacuations are concerned, they are happening as we speak as well. The authorities has cleared one town, the people of one of the towns, and is doing the needful to help all those who have been affected by this volcano erupting as a result of this fissure. We wish our brethren in Iceland all the very best, and let's see what happens. We'll be updating you with the eventualities as the news comes along. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news segment stories that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Have a great evening ahead rather, and see you tomorrow. Allah Hafiz.